chemical engineering, and then went to work for a variety of businesses, ending up in a carbide company. He worked his way up, and eventually he started his own business. When he started the business, I was just 5 years old. So I'm very proud of our history. My mother and father taught us a lot, and I lost my father now 22 years ago, and my mother is now 5 years gone. But they taught me about hard work, integrity, and responsibility, as well as respect, charity, and compassion. I'm not as hardworking as any one of these farmers here, I can tell you that, but I do work hard. When my father passed away back in 2002, I was left with the responsibility of carrying on our business and taking care of 250 people that work for us in Westmoreland County. But by the time that COVID arrived, we had grown to 350 people with 3 different businesses in 4 states, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Hawaii. And even though we were deemed an essential business or a sustainable business by 3 of the states, still General Carbide lost 60% of its business in a very short period of time. Unlike a lot of other companies that kind of rolled into the corner and waited it out, that is simply not our style. In fact, one of our core values is growth. And so we went to our sales team, we told them to look for opportunities, even in light of a very difficult time that we were having. And so one of our market segment managers, his name is Eric Butts, he is also a farmer. So he owns his own farm and he is working for us as a sales manager. He started to look for components in the farming industry made out of carbide, and he found that it was quite a large industry. But the overwhelming amount of these tools are sourced here by China. But he thought maybe we would have an opportunity by employing kind of American ingenuity and doing some things on our own. So we started to move into the industry. We've been working hard for 4 years on our different agricultural parts with some success, but not as much as we would have hoped due to the cost structure and this competitive landscape with China. As an example, we worked with a potential customer for prototypes for components that go on high-speed planting machines. We made the prototypes, we put them into the field and tested them, and they tested perfectly. But then the customer came back to us and said that even though our cost structure was in line with the domestic producer, we couldn't come close to the prices that they were getting from China, and so they would continue to purchase offshore.
That's why you need tariffs.
This is a loss of $500,000 for just that one part, and there are so many different kinds of parts that we have out there. We're currently working on components for several aspects of agricultural the market, including ground prep, seeding, and harvesting. And we've had some success. We're using better grades of carbide. That also costs more. We have instituted robotics and other innovative processes. We have 24/7 customer service and communication with our customers. And we're now a one-stop shop. But we still cannot compete against Chinese government-subsidized businesses. Additionally, the purchasing agents are not incentivized to buy on a value proposition. They're incentivized to buy the cheapest parts out there, and those parts are coming from China. So I believe we really need to do 3 things. 1, I think we need to incentivize our machine manufacturers and our farmers to purchase American machines with American-made components. Secondly, I think we need a stronger stance on China. You said it, that it should cost more to purchase components from China, not just more to purchase the materials, which is what we're up against now. And thirdly, we need to do a better job incentivizing those in purchasing to think about the value proposition, longer running machines in the field. That's really what we need to think about. So to end, I believe in the strength of this nation, Mr. President, but I also believe that you and only you are going to be able to bring back our independence
Amen.
and prosperity. And the last thing that I want to say is...
I agree. That's why you need tariffs. This is a perfect example. They undercut you, drive you out of business, and then they're going to put the price at double and triple. It's no different. It's been that way for hundreds of years. That's what they did with oil. Rockefeller would open up a station on every corner, and you'd have a gas station. Then he'd open up 3, and it cut the price so low, and everybody thought, oh, wow, what a great bargain. He'd put the one guy out of business, and then he'd raise the prices to triple, quadruple what it was. the old way, and it's no different with China or anybody else. That's why you need tariffs. We level it off, and now people are starting to understand it. Actually, I was watching Howard Lutnick and John Paulson, two of the great geniuses of Wall Street, actually two of the most successful people on Wall Street, and they're big on tariffs. They're saying Trump was right all along, and I did it. But that's exactly why. They put you right out of business, and then they'll sell the same product, but they'll be double the price of what you are and make a fortune. That's what they want to do, among other things. Can you tell the story of your daughter?
Yes, I'm sorry. The last thing I wanted to say is my hardest job is not running 3 businesses. It's actually being a mom to a daughter that is here with me today, Caroline Ray. She's 16 years old. Right there. Would you just raise your hand, honey, so that Mr. President can see you? She is right there. She is not in school today, and she asked that she could be here and she could see you. I'm doing everything that I can to try to give her the truth every day. And I just wanted to say, and I told you that 8 years ago when you were running, and she was just 8 years old then, every night she would go to bed and I would kneel on the floor next to her bed and we would pray every single night for you. And every night she would speak out to God and she would say, "Dear God, please let Mr. Trump win, please." And the night of the election, of course, she had to go to bed early because she was in school. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, when we finally knew that you had won, I went into her bedroom. I scooped her up out of her sound sleep, and I was literally tears pouring down. And I said, "Baby, Mr. Trump won, baby. He won, he won." And she said, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God." And so she is here with us today, and I just wanted to let you know that we are still praying for you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's almost more important today. When you add the border, where we have millions of people coming in and from prisons and from mental institutions and terrorists and traffickers, human traffickers, drug traffickers, I believe it's more important today. We had a bad border then, and I fixed it, totally fixed it. In fact, it wasn't even a subject at the next election, but we totally fixed it. But that border was nothing compared to what's happened now. This border is so bad and so dangerous for our country. I think it's more important today. I think it's going to be the most important election in the history of our country. Thank you very much, and thank you, beautiful daughter. Thank you very much. Very nice story. Thank you.
Beth Leeper is a small business owner, former dairy farmer, and current beef and crops farmer from Westmoreland County. I'd like to introduce Beth Leeper.
Mr. President, government and elected officials, and honored guests, thank you for coming to Western PA again today to hear our concerns and address solutions. My name is Beth Leeper, and to play opposite of Nick, I married the farmer's son, who is here today with my 2 sons, Levi and Owen. I am a Christian, a wife, a mother of 3, and a small business owner in that particular order. I, with my husband Brian, own and operate a direct-to-consumer on-the-farm market featuring beef that has been raised on the family farm in Donegal, PA. We procure lamb, chicken, and pork from other small farms in Pennsylvania like ours, and all the animals are harvested through local processors to our specifications. Since opening in 2017, our goal has been to provide our customers with consistently high-quality products while also supporting other small businesses and our community. In May of 2020, we expanded our store and offerings due to the needs of consumers during COVID and to offer other businesses another avenue to sell their goods. We now offer several agricultural and specialty items, all produced in or near the Laurel Highlands area. My husband is also a full-time owner-operator of transport in the dry bulk industry, and I also work part-time for a Christian school as the food service director. I share our occupations as an introduction to explain the challenges, due in large part to the inflation that we have seen, that we have witnessed and experienced both as a producer and a retailer, and also a consumer. As a truck driver, my husband normally fills his truck 2 to 3 times a week with diesel. In January of 21, just after Biden revoked the Keystone Pipeline, one of our fuel receipts totaled $592 for 200 gallons of fuel. That was $2.99 a gallon. In May of 22, a year after our energy independence moved overseas, one of our fuel receipts totaled $996 for 166 gallons of fuel. That was $5.99 a gallon. That $3 per gallon more means upwards of $800 to $1,200 a week in fuel expense and less to meet our business and families' needs. This net zero approach has also increased farm costs exponentially, which I know comes as no surprise to anyone here today. Fertilizer is up 30 to 60% in 2024, not to mention the increase in seed cost, the fuel, the parts and supplies, and man hours for planting. Electric has doubled from around $400 a month in 21 to $800 a month this year, just to run some equipment and the lights that doesn't include heat. In 2023, feeder calf prices reached an all-time high, coupled with the increase in other commodities and prices to farmers not keeping up. This equals very small profit margins, and therefore, we have been purchasing a fraction of the feeder cattle that we have the capacity to feed. Our farm currently feeds out approximately 70 to 100 head of cattle, and that is reduced from 180 to 200 head just 2 to 4 years ago. But we have the capacity to feed upwards of 400 to 500. Actually, we are currently feeding only enough to satisfy our direct-to-consumer base, as it remains somewhat constant. The seasonal tourism of camping and skiing in the Laurel Highlands contributes to our sales, and we are located in the heart of the Laurel Highlands. I handle all of the customer relations for our on-the-farm market, and our customers often share their concerns with me. These are some of the things I hear most often. I really don't eat a lot of beef anymore. It costs too much. I can't afford to purchase a whole animal this year. What smaller packages do you offer? We are visiting from out of town. We don't have any places like this where we are from. And recently, the thing I've heard the most is I used to purchase bulk beef from a farmer nearby, a friend, a relative, but they don't have cattle anymore. Just last week, a local dairy in operation for over 65 years announced the closure of their bottling operations due to rising costs of supplies and down demand. Other farms in the area have declared bankruptcy or sold off property and downsized. I can't even get started on the detrimental effects that the weather has had on the vegetation in our region this year. From hailstorms to droughts, our corn and soybeans were among the victims. Nevertheless, farmers are no strangers to the risk and the gamble that they take every single day in order to do what they know and love, and that is to farm their land. And as always, this too shall pass, hopefully soon. Jeremiah 29:11 tells us, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." I'm not an economist, and to be honest, foreign policy is not in my wheelhouse. But this roundtable event is to address on how to protect our farms and food from China. It seems like basic, conservative, common sense to me. Do what it takes to keep our farms producing, our markets selling, and our customers buying. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Dave McCormick, known national security expert, a fellow former veteran of the 82nd Airborne Division, and hopefully our next senator here from Pennsylvania. Dave McCormick.
Thank you. Thanks, Lee. Mr. President, thank you for being here. And, a lot of bad things have happened over the last 3.5 years, but there's two particularly relevant to this audience. One is, as Lee said, China now has the upper hand. China is our adversary, smells weakness in all of its relationships with the United States because of the weak policies of Harris, Biden, and Bob Casey, who's been a 98% vote. Right. The second bad thing that's happening is our family farms, as you're hearing, our farms across Pennsylvania are struggling. Agriculture is the biggest industry in Pennsylvania. We have 52,000 farms. And under the Biden-Harris-Casey administration, it's been a disaster. Everywhere I go, I hear the skyrocketing prices, the price of inflation. I hear the burden of regulation. I hear the implications of the war on fossil fuels and what it's done to our farmers. And so when you're back in the White House and we have a majority in the Senate to support your agenda, and I've heard you talk about this, I think the people in this room can have a lot of confidence in fair reciprocal trade. Under your leadership, we had that. We've lost that. We'll get that again. Under your leadership, we can make sure we reduce our dependence on China for semiconductors, for pharmaceuticals. We got to have food security, and the people in this room are the providers of food security, not just for Pennsylvania, but for America. We got to stop this buying of farmland. It's going up dramatically. It hasn't hit Pennsylvania much yet, but nationally it's growing dramatically. It'll come to Pennsylvania too. I know you're going to stop that. And then finally, I'm so glad you said it, energy. I mean, the reason many of these family farms are still operating is because of the energy revolution, the royalties that come from the wells on their properties, the incomes coming from energy workers. So this is a very simple choice for the people in this room and the farmers across Pennsylvania. It's a choice between strength and weakness. It's a choice between common sense policies that get our economy back on track, create a balance in our relationship with China, get the upper hand again, and unlock our energy versus a radical liberal agenda under Harris and Casey, which will take our country further in the wrong direction. I think I can say with a lot of confidence, Mr. President, the Pennsylvania farmers, the agriculture community here has your back. Thank you.
I think they do. Thank you. And you're right, David. Bob Casey, and I've been there for a long time, actually, 4 years, but a long time. He has done nothing for the farmer. He has not been there. He's 100% with the Biden vote, I guess just about 100% of the time. Bob Casey is not the right one. This gentleman right here, he's tough, he's smart, and he loves the farmer, and we're going to turn it around. But Bob Casey could not help us. He has never done it. Not good for the farmer. So I think you probably learned that the hard way. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, sir.
Darrell Becker is the Fayette County Farm Bureau president. This time I'd like to introduce Darrell Becker.
Thank you. As Mr. Zeldin said, my name is Darrell Becker. I'm a 30-year Fayette County farmer who operates a beef, sheep, and hog farm with my wife, 2 adult children, and my son-in-law. And we have an intergenerational family. I have 3 of my grandkids live with me. It's wonderful. I also serve as president of Fayette County Farm Bureau for the last 6 years, and I'm also the chairman of the Lands Preservation Board for the last 6 years. And I was going to talk about land preservation, but I got beat up by my local members who tell me that I need to talk about soybeans. So I will tell you that we all know that China has no desire to buy products from us. We know that from what happened in your last administration, where they didn't even want to deal with fair trade. They're working on being less dependent on U.S. goods, and likewise, we need to be less dependent on them. This is incredible. Last week, news came out from California's All Resources Board, CARB, a governing body in charge of the state's air quality rules, who wants to mandate a limit on the amount of biodiesel fuel produced from soybean and canola oil. Under the proposal, beginning in 2028, they would only be eligible for low-carbon fuel standards who use canola and things, only be able to get 20% of the credits of their annual production. Those replacing American grain production used for oil would be assigned a higher carbon intensity score, thus reducing the interest in U.S. bean products. Meanwhile, the USDA has just reported that renewable diesel fuel imports surged 30% higher last year in the first 5 months of this year, so that they could take advantage of these federal and state tax credits. In addition, imports of used cooking oil from China are flowing into the U.S. like never before to capture these biofuel tax credits. Farm Bureau and other biofuel advocates are pressing regulators to close the loophole so that only domestic producers are eligible for these tax credits. Because of this change, estimates project that American farmers in California alone would lose 200,000 acres of production. This is diametrically opposed to what American agriculture is all about. We know China's not our friend. Figures, that's why I got to read. I can't remember all these things. 2024 corn receipts are down 20%. Soybean receipts are down 14%. Wheat receipts are down 12%. Government payments to make up the shortfall are not due until October 2025. Expenses for 2025 may expect to decline 1%, but last year in 2009, China bought 49% of our exported soybeans. Now it's 31%. 70% of our bean crop goes to animal feed. Bean exports in 2023 were $34.4 billion. In 2024, they're estimated to be $27 billion. China owns 384,000 acres of our farmland. That's up 30% in the last 5 years. And guess what? The American government can't buy farmland in China. They don't allow us.
That's right.
Can you imagine that? At present, the U.S. has a huge supply of soybeans sitting at a multi-year low price, sometimes being sold below production cost. Farmers are using reserve funds to buy and produce soybeans now. There's no cash flow available to them due to the low price. You know this is unsustainable. So soybean farmers definitely need our help. Sustainable aviation fuel also uses soy, canola, and other seed crops from American farmer, and this is also under attack. We are putting ourselves at extreme risk in supply chain, knowing that a huge amount of the herbicide 2,4-D and many repair parts for agricultural use are imported from China. How much risk can we absorb and rely on a country that is trying to replace us? We need to build domestic demand. Our government needs to invest in American agriculture. American farmers want a free market that can sustain the industry. They don't want handouts, and they don't want loans. They want to be able to produce their farms. They're all hard. This is the backbone of America. The current administration has shown that they are not friendly to American agriculture. Every producer that I spoke to for this presentation resonated the same message. We cannot survive another 4 years. Mr. President, my 3 grandkids who live with me, if you could see Henry, who's 3, and Holland, who's 2, get into the UTV and drive down to what they call the big barn when we feed our steers, or they go pick chicken eggs, or they help us move cattle. The spark in their eye, the smile on their face, that's the future of America, and I want to make sure it stays here, and I know you do too. So I guess they all said that we wouldn't survive 4 years. I'm sure that when you get elected, that my line would be, help us make American agriculture great again.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. President.
We'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. It's not very difficult to do. We're just being ripped off by other countries, and not only China, by the way, but we're being ripped off at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And this administration has allowed it to happen because you were making probably the best you've ever done 4 years ago, 5 years ago. You were doing better. All farmers were. They were doing better than they ever did. And now they're doing very better. I mean, I hear more complaints from farmers than almost anybody, and that's the backbone of this country. So they'll be very happy for a long time to come, okay?
Can I add one more thing and say
Yes.
to you that we've seen the decline of the mom and pop stores. And what you're hearing is that we're seeing the decline of the American family farm. That's America. So, I mean, anybody that starts paying attention to what's going on needs to wake up and get out and vote. And we know who they got to vote for. You, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I love your hat, too, by the way. I noticed it right away. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
We'll take care of them. Your grandchildren will be farmers,
Thank
and they'll be maybe doing better than you do, okay?
Thank you
you very much.
Before we introduce our final speaker, Kevin Sweeney, just want to say thank you to my former colleague, Chairman G.T. Thompson, the chair of the House Committee on Agriculture. We have Kim Ward, the Senate President here in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and Dan Mall, who is the GOP chair of the Pennsylvania House Ag and Rural Affairs. At this time, we're going to introduce our final speaker, Kevin Sweeney, who's a cattle farmer from Washington County. Kevin?
Thank you. Mr. President, I want to thank you for your personal sacrifice for us and your family. Thank you. I'm 71 years old. I'm a new farmer. I've owned my property since 1988. I'm a retired physical therapist, and I have 4 kids and 4 grandkids, and my goal is to develop this farm and make it a legacy farm like some of the people around the table are now talking. I raise beef and sell hay. That's all I can do. My soil is type 7 soil. The USDA has a soil map of the entire country. That soil is only good for raising grass and beef, and maybe grow some trees for timber. And I'm trying to expand it each year. I have a customer base that's getting bigger each year, and I've been full-time retired since 2019, and that's what I do. The issue that I want to talk about today in regard to China is solar panels. I'm being approached, and other farmers are being approached. The current offer is $3,000 a month per acre per year for the next 30 years. That's a lot of money. Who's subsidizing that? Is our government behind these people that are offering us this money? Where's that coming from?
Well, they are.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
That's right. They are, and they're allowing China to come in and just dominate the industry. That's right. They're sending panels over. Many of them are very defective, very bad panels, but they're sending them over, and they are really putting a lot of people out of work. But that's amazing.
It's an issue.
That's a form of subsidy.
Most of the small farms that are around me, I'm very close to Enlow Fork Bailey Mine Complex. It's one of the top 10 underground coal mines in the country, and they're in that group. They mine a lot of coal. All that coal goes down the railroad, into the rivers, and goes to China. Okay, and it's unfortunate. These companies I'm surrounded by have bought up a lot of the small farms that I was fortunate enough to buy in 1988. They were beef farms. They were the same type of farmers as mine, but they own all these. They own all this property. Okay, my concern is, what if one of these foreign entities come in, and even though they don't own the land, they buy that company and indirectly have control of the lease or that land and are able to use it for whatever reason. My other concern is the federal government. What if, for public use, they come in and say that they want to take my farm and put solar panels on it? What guarantee do any of us have that the government, Big Brother, won't come in and do that to us? We need to know about that. That concerns me. In the news right now is the sale of U.S. Steel to Japan. Okay, and I just happened to be researching it. I didn't realize that U.S. Steel has a land division, huge land division. They have vast holdings in this country. So when when Japan buys U.S. Steel, they're buying a lot of land with it. Will they have the ability to put solar panels on it or use it for another purpose? We don't know. It concerns me. U.S. Steel also owns a lot of coal mines and iron ore mines, which I didn't realize. They have all these iron ore mines out west, and a foreign entity is now going to own all those. And I've said this for a long time. I'm from the Mon Valley, and when I grew up, there were steel mills everywhere. Everybody in my family worked for steel mills. There's none left. They're torn down. They're not even there. The same with coal-fired power plants. They're gone. Should we have some sort of a strategic plan to keep some of these steel mills and to keep some of this stuff as a strategic reserve, whether it's minerals, not only oil, but coal, iron ore, those sort of things? It concerns me that that's just going to go away to foreign countries. It worries me. I have a couple of tax concerns, one being the death tax. My 4 kids, what's going to happen? I'm 71 years old when I'm not here. They're going to pay big money, or they're going to have to sell out, or they're going to have to go get solar panels to keep the property. So, if you can do something about the death tax, appreciate it.
By the way, the death tax, as you know, in the Trump bill, you don't have to pay a death tax or a inheritance tax. And under them, they want that terminated. They want you to pay. And what happens, especially with farmers, you're sort of land rich but cash poor. A lot of farmers are land rich and you love it, but you don't always have cash. And you leave it to your loved ones. You leave it to your children, which you want to do. That's what the ultimate is. If you love your children. In some cases, you don't love your children. You don't have to leave them anything, right? But generally, you love your children. And you leave. You have no problem with your children. But you leave it to your children, and what was happening is people were going out borrowing a lot of money in order to pay the tax, borrowing from the banks on their farm, big liens on the farm, very smart banks that know how to do it, and the children would go bust, or they'd spend everything they could to pay the tax, and they'd live a very tough life and usually lose the land. I got rid of that. You have no tax to pay on these small farms and businesses. And it's a great thing. Nobody talks about it much. The fake news doesn't ever talk about it, but it's a tremendous factor. And it was one of the things that I was happiest about, because literally farmers are going out of business. Children, they take the farm from their parents and they have to go out borrow a lot of money, and they can't afford to do it, and they can't pay the interest rates. They end up losing the farm over a short period of time. So we got rid of the estate tax or the death tax. And now it will come back under play under Comrade Kamala. That's what happens. That's not good.
What about our capital gains tax? Are we going to keep that down?
Well, that's the worst. They have unrealized capital gain. How about that?
Yeah, how about that?
Unrealized. So they want to give you a capital gain if the value of your land goes up. Nobody's ever heard of it before. It's a communist thing, It's a communist thing. It's unrealized capital gain. You'll have every business person, every company leaving this country. It's called an unrealized capital gain, and it's a concept that's been talked about for years. I don't know if any country has even done it, but she wants to do it here. And, come to think of it, now that I'm with farmers, it'll affect farmers probably worse than
We
anybody.
have all the minerals under us which we own, and they're going to put a value on those, and even though we haven't taken
You
them
know who's
out,
going
we
to
have
make a lot
pay
of
for
money?
them.
Appraisers, lawyers, and accountants.
Well, I have
Not
two
you.
accountants, two of my sons are accountants.
They'll be very happy.
It's crazy. I have some expenses regarding fuel, okay, and I had the opportunity to call up my fuel provider last Thursday when I found out I was going to be here, and I'll just give you a couple of numbers. Use a fair amount of off-road diesel. Off-road diesels come down in price surprisingly in an election year. Right now, 2024, I can buy off-road diesel for $2.95 a gallon. Okay, in 2020, $1.86. Regular diesel, I use for my truck. It has a road tax and stuff on it. It's around $4.50 a gallon now. Back in 2020, it was around $2.80. Non-ethanol gasoline, ethanol gasoline, as much as we want to have ethanol, it's not good for small equipment, chainsaws and all the small equipment. It eats up the carburetors. It's really not a good thing to have in small equipment. So I use non-ethanol gas. Right now, it's $4 a gallon. 2020, it was around $3.15. So it's gone up. Propane I use to heat with, it stayed about the same. It was $1.97 a gallon in 2024. In 2020, it's $1.65. But, the other thing, I lime my fields, because the pH, is low. You've got to have a certain pH to grow good grass, just like the golf course. You understand that part. Anyways, just recently, I had an arrangement to have some delivered and spread. It was $45 or $50 a ton. They call me, well, there's been a price increase. It's $70 a ton now, just out of the clear blue. It increased my expense. Fertilizer was $600 a ton. I'm paying $1,000 a ton for fertilizer now. I mean, it's just costs are out of control. The only thing that helps me is the fracking and the money that I was able to get from that. It's allowed me to keep my equipment. It's allowed me to buy another farm adjacent to me. And I'm hopeful that the fracking continues, and I know it will. And I'm hoping we get more of it so that my kids won't have to be forced at my demise to sell the farm to pay the tax.
You'll be around a long time. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
But it will not continue.
I'm not a worrier.
They get in, the fracking will not continue, I guarantee you that.
My concern in this environment is that small family farms in Pennsylvania are in peril from two sources. One is the foreign competition we've talked about, and the second, I believe, is the federal government. And we need to be left alone. Just get out of our lives, leave us alone, we'll figure it out. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. Mr. President, I know you're about to get on the road to an amazing rally up in Indiana, but before you leave, and I know Ambassador Grinnell had some final words, would like to turn the floor over to our next president, Mr.
Well, thank you
Mr.
very
Trump.
much. And it's been great. I love the farmers. I'm very comfortable with the farmers. I feel I know your business, but I haven't plowed quite as much as you. But I do know your business very well. We've had a tremendous relationship. I've always won with the farmers, and that's because I produce promises made, promises kept. Number one, your energy bill within 12 months will be cut in half, and that's my pledge all over the country. Beyond farmers, that's my pledge all over the country. We have more energy under our feet than any other country. I call it liquid gold, and we have more than any other country. We have Anwar in Alaska, which the first thing they did, the Biden-Harris administration, everybody wanted it. It's the biggest. It could be as big or bigger than Saudi Arabia, and would have supplied Asia, would have supplied vast parts of the world, would have made more money than you could even imagine. We were going to lower your taxes, pay off debt. They terminated it. Reagan wanted it, couldn't get it. Everybody wanted it, couldn't get it. I got it. They were all set to drill, and the first thing they did the first week is they terminated Anwar. But I can get it back very quickly because I got it through Congress, and we'll get it back very quickly. They didn't terminate it through Congress. They just terminated it. Just absolutely ridiculous. But I'll have your energy bill down. Within 12 months, we'll have your energy bills throughout the country. I'm not just talking here. I'm talking all over. Air conditioning, heating, everything, we'll have it down by 50%, 5-0. And it won't even be very hard. Up in New England, they have tremendous energy costs, and a few minor changes and we can reduce it. New England is a disaster. I won't say they vote for Democrats so much anymore. I think we're probably taking that over because of energy and because of a lot of other reasons. But we're going to protect your fracking. You know, in my case, I was always for it, and in her case, she was never for it. She wants to defund the police, too. All of a sudden, she likes the police. Started a short while ago. I really like the police a lot. Now, she wanted to defund the police. She did things in Minnesota that was so bad. She was bailing out people that wanted to kill the police and were actually trying to kill the police and burning down Minneapolis. So we're going to do things the way you want it. A big factor here is, with all of you as I speak, is energy in two ways. Number one, you want to be able to collect royalties and other things, or even have a job in energy. That's very important to help your farm. And the other thing is you got to keep the prices down. So we're going to do both, and we'll do it fast too. It'll be largely taken care of within 12 months. I predict within 12 months it'll be down 50%. And if they get in, your energy costs are going through the roof. Okay, they're going to go through the roof. You won't have a farm very long. I will tell you that. I just noticed behind me John Deere tractors. I know a lot about John Deere. I love the company, but as you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States, so that if I win, John Deere is going to be paying a 200%. They haven't started it yet. Maybe they haven't even made the final decision yet, but I think they have. John Deere is going to, and anybody else that does this, because it's hurting our farmers, it's hurting our manufacturing. And if you do that, you're going to have a 200% tariff put on the product that you make in Mexico, right across the border. They think they're going to make product cheaper in Mexico and then sell it in for the same price as they did before, make a lot of money by getting rid of our labor and our jobs, and really a great name, because John Deere's a great name. I buy a lot of John Deere, tremendous. I'm one of their big customers. I buy a lot of John Deere product as a private person. But if they're going to do that, we're going to put a 200% tariff on everything that they want to send back into the United States, which means one of two things. Our country's going to make a lot of money, or they're not going to build, they're not going to open, and or they're going to sell it to another country. They're entitled to do that. If they want to build in the country, in the United States, there's no tariff. You can go ahead and you can build in any one of the 50 states. You can go ahead. But if they don't want to do that, we're going to put a 200% tariff on John Deere. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to announce very shortly, if they think I'm going to win, or if I do win, they're going to announce that they're not going to build in Mexico. Mexico's taken a tremendous amount of our business, especially over the last few years with this group, because this group doesn't know what the hell they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing. Mexico is taking a lot of business, and a lot of it's done and financed by China. China is building massive car plants now in Mexico, and it's the same thing they're building. And a friend of mine builds car plants, and he said the biggest ones in the world are being built in Mexico. They're going to put Detroit out of business. They're going to put car manufacturing out of business in the United States. And I'm just telling everybody involved in this stuff, we're not going to rip off the United States anymore. We're going to put big tariffs on those cars that are coming in here at 100 to 200%, and they're no longer going to be competitive. So you better stay in Michigan, and you better stay in the areas that you're in right now. And what I really want you to do is come in and build your plants in this country and put our auto workers to work, because we've lost about 60% of our auto working business over the years. And we're going to get it all back, every one of them. We're going to get it all back, and we're going to get it back quickly. And we can control that so easily. So if they're building those plants in Mexico, which they're starting, if they're building and they wouldn't have done it with me, but now I guess they figure when they started, it was a little while ago, I guess they didn't even know I was going to run. They weren't too happy when they heard I was going to. But they're going to have to pay a tremendous tariff, which means two things. They're not going to build the plant. If it's not too late, they're not going to build the plant. This country is going to make a lot of money. Or they're going to build the plant, but they're going to build it in the United States somewhere, and ideally a place like Michigan or South Carolina, where we have a lot of auto business. But we're not going to let that happen. But John Deere has got to understand that if they build in Mexico, if they start closing plants, in this case it was in Iowa, they're going to close a big plant, and a couple of them. And that's just the beginning. The problem is that's just the beginning. Then all of a sudden you'll hear in a year from now they're going to do another one. All of a sudden they're not going to be in the country anymore. They're going to have to pay a very big price to be able to sell that product into the United States, okay? So That's very important. And I just have to say this, so Dave McCormick is here. He's running for the Senate. He's a great gentleman. He's a hero, great warrior, and he's a real warrior, too. Served incredibly in the military, so highly respected, did great in the military, went out, did tremendously in the private sector, and he's running against Bob Casey. Bob Casey never did anything for you. He never did anything for Pennsylvania. I was president for 4 years. I don't even know if I ever met him. I mean, I've met everybody. I don't know if I met him. Maybe I did, but it certainly didn't make a hell of an impression on me. But Bob Casey has done nothing for you as farmers. Well, look at the problems you have. As soon as I left, you have problems. You didn't have problems when I was running things because we ran it and we watched over the farmers. It was very important to me. But Bob Casey has done nothing for the farmers, and he's done nothing for the state. He's got long-term legacy. He inherited the job sort of from his father. And, when that happens, I was telling David, not easy there are other cases like that, too. Never easy to beat, but they're living only on a past reputation of somebody else, in this case, a father. He's done nothing for the state, and I didn't come here for David, but I have a lot of respect for him. And if I only do David, I tell you what, you have to get him. He's an incredible guy. He's going to make your farmers, he's going to help me make the farmers rich. We'll make the farmers rich again. And I appreciate everybody. I appreciate very much everybody. Just hang in there, and I know it's not been pleasant. But the first thing I do is I tell China, you got to start buying. China's not buying like they're supposed to under the agreement. And I'd say, China, you have to start buying. I'd like to, if I can, Lee, I'd like to have a few questions, if you want, from the media in the back. A lot of media here. Yes, ma'am. Well, we're going to protect it by saying you can't come. You can't do it. We don't want you buying our land. We don't want you taking the land and basically taking it off the market. And we don't want you doing it. And they're buying at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We don't want you buying. It's very easy to do. That's a very easy thing to do. But it's causing a lot of disruption, and that's what they want to do. So we can do that very easily. Question? Yeah, please. Yes, sir. They'll approve it. They'll approve it. And number one, I don't need them. I don't need Congress, but they'll approve it. I have the right to impose them myself if they don't. I'd rather get their support. The ones that understand business all support it. I think David would be a very big supporter of the tariffs because you understand what's happening, right? David's a great business person, led a great company. No, the ones that understand business, they understand. I'll give you an example. China will charge us, and it's not only China. I hate to keep using China because it's everyone. The European Union is a disaster for you also, by the way. They don't want your farm product. They don't want our cars. They don't want anything, and yet they sell tremendous amounts of Mercedes-Benzes, and they sell cars to us, but they don't want our cars. They don't want our farm product at all. They don't want it, but they sell farm product to us. And we have a tremendous deficit. And I had them shaped up real good, but they've gotten out of control. They're really out of control. And Mexico's out of control, to be honest with you. They're taking a lot of our companies in the last couple of years, and companies are moving down to Mexico. They don't know that if I come in, it's not going to work out too well for them because they're not going to be able to sell their product into the United States. They're going to have to pay a price, which will make it uncompetitive for them to do that. So we are going to do a real job. We need the support of Pennsylvania. It's a very important state, and she is not going